Years ago, I worked in a prison. In many ways, it's exactly what you would imagine. There was solitary confinement, there was a maximum security area, and in many ways, it's not at all what you would expect. The prison that I was at was a more so progressive kind of prison. Studies have revealed that longer, harsher sentences typically do not help to reduce the number of reoffending inmates. And instead, what helps reoffending inmates to heal, get better, and never come to prison again because their lives have improved is rehabilitation. I had just received my degree in exercise science, and so I was actually not a guard at the gym, I was a recreation officer. Basically, it meant that I worked out with the inmates, I would talk to them about diet, exercise, stress management, those kinds of things. There was around that time that I was reading the Warren Buffett biography called Snowball. In Snowball, the biographer, Alice Schroeder, points out some key moments in Warren's life that really were turning points. And Warren himself has said that he feels so incredibly lucky that he has a skill set and a mind and a brain that have helped him have the exact perfect set of circumstances to become the world-renowned investor and billionaire that he is today. Warren highlights that if you changed any one of the factors about his life, he wouldn't be the famous guy that we all know today. For example, he says, just look at his sisters. They grew up in the same home, went to the same schools, had the same parents, yet because they were women instead of men, they're not the billionaire, famous investors that he is. You wouldn't even know about them unless if they were not his sisters. So along those lines, Warren points out how having just the right circumstances really set the scene for him to have the success of his life today. So as I'm reading this book, at the time I was probably, 24, 25, 26. I was thinking about it and I was like starting to feel sorry for myself. Maybe I didn't have the perfect circumstances and I should probably be further ahead at this point in my life, and started to kind of feel sorry for myself. And so as I go to work one day at the prison, I walk in and I go through the airport style security. They take my bag and they put it through the scanner to make sure there's no weapons, no contraband or anything like that. I collect my bag on the other side. I take a few paces forward and that buzzing sound rings through the room and the door slams behind me. I am now in the prison. As I sat back in that exact moment, something hit me. It hit me that even though I was feeling sorry for myself that I wasn't further ahead, I was feeling sorry for myself that maybe I didn't have the exact set of circumstances that Warren Buffett had. It dawned on me that here in this prison, basically my basement of potential in life was probably higher than many of the ceiling of potential for many of the inmates. My brain started to cycle through the backstory of the inmates that I'd gotten to know and that I'd read the evaluations on. And it was pretty surprising how many of them had been born with fetal alcohol syndrome because their mothers had been drinking during pregnancy. And that really impaired their cognitive ability to learn and to make decisions and to move through the world. Many of them suffered from holes in their lungs because their mothers had smoked during pregnancy. And so their physical ability to get up and move and work out and be free in their bodies was not the same as mine. Some of the inmates were even addicted to drugs at birth, again, because their mothers were doing drugs during pregnancy. And I think about the environment that they were in growing up, oftentimes surrounded by violence, oftentimes surrounded by prostitution and drugs, not much hope, not many prospects in their future. And that's when it hit me. Warren in his book talked about having won the Ovarian Lottery, which is kind of a funny term, the Ovarian Lottery, for being born into the family that he was. And in that moment in that prison, it hit me that actually I too had won the Ovarian Lottery. Just to have a sound body, just to have a sound mind. Heck, I just finished a university degree. When you zoom out and you look at the big wide world, not that many people in the world have a university degree. It's a big advantage. And it's in that moment that I realized that actually I was in an incredibly privileged position. Just to be living in a first world country, just to be living in a body that functioned well with a mind that was sound. That really anything was possible for me. Anything was possible for me just by virtue of living where I lived. Now, I don't come from like a trust fund type situation. My mom is a kindergarten teacher, my dad's a truck driver, and yet here I am. Someone pointed out to me a little while ago, if you had to choose between living like a king or a queen in the 1400s, 1500s, or 1600s, would you prefer doing that? Or would you prefer to live as a average middle-class person in the United States or Canada in 2023, 24, 25? Now, the instinct might be, well, I would definitely love to be a king or a queen. That sounds so fantastic and opulent. Until you start thinking about the actual day-to-day. They didn't have electricity. That means there's no computers. It means there's no internet. There were no phone lines. There's no indoor plumbing. You'd have to either, go to an outhouse, or, the royals would have bedpans and whatnot. It would stink, and showering wasn't really a thing. Like if you just kind of go through the basics of what creates a good quality of life, the quality of life of an average middle class person in the United States or Canada and all the parts of the developed world is actually substantially higher than the lives of kings and queens from just a few hundred years ago. So that really sat with me. I can oftentimes get into a little bit of a pity party with myself. So to kind of have that reframe was extremely productive for me and really brought me forward as I was moving into my life. And little did I know, I'd actually be entering one of the hardest seasons of my life. I worked at the prison for maybe a year or something like that, maybe 6 months, I don't remember. And right after that, I thought, hey, it's get rich time. And I raised some money. This is the time that real estate was really climbing. And I ended up losing, in today's money, probably about the equivalent of about $320,000, largely of other people's money. All the stress of that led to me developing an illness. And that illness meant that I couldn't walk for 3 full months. I moved back with my parents for full-time care. Had my mom not paid my mortgage for me for 3 months, I would have gone double bankrupt, both in my fledgling business and also in my personal finance. Laying in bed for 3 months, that really gave me a tremendous opportunity to think about how I'd put myself in that situation. And one of the incredible insights that I got was that it was actually an incredible gift that I'd gone through some of my trials and tribulations. One day when I was laying in bed, I had this kind of download from the divine that came to my mind. The image I had was actually of a big, beautiful oak tree, kind of like you'd see in the southern parts of the United States. I'd around that time learned that oak trees, as big as the canopy is on the top of the oak tree, there's actually an equally large root system that's beneath the earth. So literally, if the circumference of this oak tree's canopy might be 50 feet or 100 feet, quite large, when we stand underneath that oak tree's massive canopy, if we looked down, we would actually see, if we could see through the earth, of course, an equal size root system beneath us. So in a sense, we're almost surrounded by the tree. Now that root system is absolutely essential because if a big wind came by and caught that massive canopy and that big trunk that's grown so big and so impressive, if there wasn't that huge root system beneath the earth, then that tree would fall over immediately. And so it's actually the unseen parts, the foundation growing beneath the soil, that allows that big, beautiful canopy to stand, not just for a few minutes or a few days or a few weeks, but to have an enduring presence, an enduring beauty, an enduring utility to be able to catch big sunshine and do all the photosynthesis things so that tree can continue to live. And at the same time, the roots are gathering all the water and nutrients from the soil, doing its part as well. And for me, I was so caught up in getting rich and famous that I really just wanted the biggest, most beautiful oak tree. I wanted to be seen as a super success. I wanted to be driving fancy SUVs and living in penthouses. That's really what I wanted. It was really kind of I wanted the big fancy canopy, and I didn't get it. Instead, I lost a ton of money. And when I was reflecting on my losses, laying in bed day after day after day after day, it dawned on me that had I gotten everything that I wanted, had I made hundreds of thousands of dollars in real estate really quickly, and I would have bought the Cadillac Escalade and gotten the penthouse condo, that when the crash came, it actually would have bankrupted me. Because I didn't get what I wanted, I didn't have the liabilities and the car payments and the extra mortgages on the expensive homes. I didn't have those things. And so when the crash came, yes, it wiped me out, but it didn't completely knock out my flame of hope and inspiration. Now, I'll tell you, I had to squint awfully close to see that flame of hope and inspiration. because it was, I'll tell you, it was small and it was flickering at times. I felt very, very, very discouraged, but it stayed alive. Had I gotten what I wanted, it's possible it could have been extinguished entirely. So in reflecting, it's kind of like the divine or the universe kind of like gave me shelter. And I actually was lucky to only lose the equivalent of $320,000. I was able to keep my credit. I was able to keep my reputation did take some hit, but not so bad that I couldn't recover. And there was just this collection of lessons and experiences and maturation points that were necessary gates that I had to pass through so that I would be ready to receive not just one time, but to receive and shepherd and be a good steward of the success that I said that I wanted. I didn't have the maturity. I didn't have the root system to support the size of tree that I wanted, the size of canopy, big, beautiful, wonderful shade for my family and friends to be under, the protection of it, the beauty of it. I wasn't ready for it. And life, in my experience and in my view, has this really extraordinary way of giving us what we can handle. And in that moment, I suddenly forgave myself for being where I was. And I simply viewed it as, okay, I've gotten to some level of the video game here. And for me to graduate to the next level, I'm going to have to evolve. I'm going to need to evolve my mindset. I'm going to need to evolve my skill set. I'm going to have to evolve the coaching that I get. I'm going to have to evolve the community of people that I'm around, people who believe, people who've been down the road that I want to go down as an entrepreneur, so that when it gets tough for me to keep the faith, I can turn to them and they can go, oh yeah, for sure you can do that, no problem. I also needed to upgrade the tools, the strategy, and the environment. Altogether, I actually realized there's what I call the 7 pillars. And these 7 pillars are kind of like levels on a sound recording board. You know, they have the sliders, they move up and down. And anytime I've had problems, it's because there's been something or maybe many of my sliders of the 7 pillars that are missing. And, or if I'm looking forward to accomplish something, I can now actually design what I need in those 7 pillars. So fairly recently, I decided to pick up the game of beach volleyball. I've been at it for about 1.5 years now. Given the past experience that I had and the 7 pillars that I've learned, again, those are skill set, mindset, coaching, community, tools, strategy, and environment. I was able to literally design and go and find who's going to be my coach. What beliefs do I need? What players do I need around me? Same thing, just about 1.5 years ago, I started writing a book. And I asked myself the exact same question. What skills am I going to need? What mindset am I going to need? What coaching? What community? What tools? What strategy? What environment? And up until that point, I'd really struggled with the idea of writing a book. It's very time consuming. But by turning to the 7 pillars, I discovered, you know what? If I just blocked off my entire Monday, left my apartment, got to a different environment, there's that word again, and dedicated the whole day to doing at least 6 hours of deep work, I could probably get this thing written. And sure enough, it happened very quickly. Like within 6 deep work Mondays, I ended up writing 40,000 words and was ready to hand this book off to an editor. So succeeding has like kind of a formula to it, if you will. Now, obviously you've got to be in a country and in a situation where you've got the freedom to take advantage of some of these ideas. And if you're not, maybe one of your goals is to get to a country that does. As I think forward, I also think about just how remarkable today and the technology of today really is. Do you realize that ChatGPT in 1 month went from 0 users to 1 million users? Do you realize that the speed to becoming a billionaire used to be like 30, 40 years, and we've now seen it happen in the matter of like less than 5? Do you realize that the cycle time these days to find new scientific discoveries is the fastest it's ever been? Like diseases that were incurable just 100 years ago, maybe even 70 years ago, it's like the speed at which we're solving medical issues is like never before. And so now when I think about where I stand and I think about, wow, I'm so lucky to be in the United States. I'm so lucky to have this like middle class or upper middle class life and a sound mind and a sound body. The speed with which my life can elevate now is like no other time in history. despite what the news sounds like, all of the outrage over everything all the time, do you realize that this is actually the longest period in known recent history that there's been no major World War level conflict? Do you realize that the safety of our cities is actually the highest it's ever been? When you look at the average across the entirety of the United States and Canada, you'll see that the number of violent crimes is actually lower than it's ever been. It's like we're more paranoid about kids being safe on the playground, and yet this is the time where there's been the fewest kidnappings of children and whatnot. Now, the interesting thing is, like, yes, there are still issues. I'm not here to say all is good. Certainly the United States, Canada, and every city and every country around the world has its challenges and its injustices. And there's never been a better time to be alive than right now. Now, if for whatever reason you're not aligned with that, no problem. I'll share with you that whether this is the best time to be alive or not, this is what we got. This right now is what we got. As much as we may yearn for another time, yesteryear, when times were better and things were easier, it's gone. What we got is right now. And to me, if we can take a look at what's working in our lives, and we can take a look at what's working about where we live, and if we take a look at what's working in terms of our business and in terms of our customers and what's working in our industry, I think that perhaps some of that hope that is just the oxygen of the soul can start to spark up to life a little bit more. There's a great exercise from Dan Sullivan. I don't know what he calls it, but it's a very simple exercise. Every night before you go to bed, write down 3 things that worked. Now, maybe on your tougher days, it's like, I didn't flip off that person who cut me off in traffic, and I didn't yell at my kids, right? Maybe they're humble victories each day, but to write down 3 victories each and every day. It's amazing what it does for the confidence and what it does for our sense of hope. I'd like to close this by saying that wherever you are, I am 100% confident that within 1 year of diligent, designed action, you could completely blow yourself away. If you were to think about where you want to be in 1 year from now, and you took the 7 pillars, skill set, mindset, coaching, community, tools, strategy, environment, and you were to maybe put them all side by side on a piece of paper, and you just started bulleting what you have, I think you'd suddenly go, actually, I've got more at my fingertips here than I really realized. And there's a bunch of kind of breadcrumbs here that I could follow and see where they take me. Maybe so-and-so could introduce me to someone who introduced me to someone who gets me to who I got to talk to. From there, take your 7 pillars and now ask yourself, what's missing? What's missing in skill set, mindset, coaching, community, tools, strategy, and environment? And from there, let's go get it. Let's design it. Let's roadmap it. Who do you got to call? What do you got to learn? Where do you need to forgive yourself? I think that if you give yourself 1 year and you take your 7 pillars and you design out what that needs to be, and you make a 1% improvement on whatever is needed next, day in and day out, you would be astounded with where you land in 1 year from now. So if you're feeling like up until now, you've fallen behind in life, I feel you. I definitely have seasons myself where I feel like, geez, I really should be a little further ahead in business. I really wish I was a little richer or more secure financially, or more able to provide more for others. I have those feelings too. And wherever you're at, wherever I'm at, it's just where we're at. Until now, maybe I've felt financially short. Until now, maybe I haven't been as physically active as I'd like to be. Until now, maybe I haven't been as happy as I could be. Just make sure that you keep that until now piece. As one of my spiritual teachers, Dr. David Wolf, says, your biography does not have to be your destiny. Keep the faith, my friend. Hope is the currency of the soul. And mark this day, because in 1 year from now, I want you to look back on this day so you can be totally amazed with the incredible progress you've made. I hope that you choose to subscribe to my channel here. The journey of entrepreneurship is as much a journey of the inside as it is on the outside. Every little like, every subscribe, every comment makes a big difference for me. It really inspires me to keep doing these videos. See you in the next one.